Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexanderson, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. The Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is a gigantic operation. As the largest public landowner in the Commonwealth, DCNR manages millions of acres of land, including 124 state parks and 20 state forests. But it doesn't end there. DCNR also manages everything on those millions of acres. There's the buildings, education centers, campgrounds, museums, playgrounds, yurts, pools, cabins, lakes, and parking lots. And then there's the hiking trails, bike paths, kayak launches, ATV trails, overlooks, and vistas. The list goes on and on and on. With a staff of nearly 1,400 full-time and 1,300 seasonal employees, DCNR must cover the day-to-day operations of these lands and facilities while also planning for the next 20 to 50 years. It's an incredible amount of work that seems almost impossible to address. Luckily, we have someone leading the way. Someone who loves our public lands and inspires us to love them too. Someone who's as comfortable paddling in the Susquehanna River as they are in a room full of lawmakers. Someone who listens and learns. Someone whose compassion and respect guides their leadership. A true Pennsylvanian. A true public servant. I'm excited to welcome Secretary Cindy Adams Dunn to the podcast. Cindy is the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Secretary, thanks so much for joining the program.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up, your family, how you came to love the outdoors?
I grew up in a rural area north of Harrisburg, Fishing Creek Valley. At the time, it was very rural. Um, I was allowed to walk to the top of both mountains in that valley. I was allowed to explore the creek, look for crayfish, wander freely with the only instruction I had to be home for supper. So I had free reign in the outdoors. I loved that kind of exploration. If for family outings, we would go camping, fishing at a nearby state park, boating on the Susquehanna in a small motorboat, hiking in the fall, particularly hawk watching. So I was just really fortunate to have parents who took us outdoors. And it was particularly my father. He had an avid interest in the outdoors. He grew up in the Johnstown area where a lot of the environment at the time he grew up had been really pretty ruined by the pre-regulatory coal mining, and he really appreciated clean water and forested mountains and took us outside a lot. And my mother was willing to help with hiking and picnicking and camping, and I felt very fortunate to have that kind of a childhood, and it's something I really wish everyone had some flavor of.
You joined DCNR in the mid-1990s, holding numerous roles within the department. What changes have you seen within the department and how it operates?
Well, DCNR was brand new in the mid 90s. It was formed in this current formation by the split of the old Department of Environmental Resources. And so it was set up anew with a fresh look at what was needed. And we followed the pattern set up then. It was really strongly tied to our constitutional right to clean air, clean water, access to the natural environment. It was built up in principles of stewardship, partnership, and service. And those principles carry forward to this day. They still speak strongly to our work, but a lot has changed in the way our work is done and the way the mission is perceived by the public. Back in the 90s, things like protecting biodiversity were controversial. And today, people understand the need to protect nature and all its elements. Some of the programs we've developed in DCNR to help people understand that have really gone a long way to assuaging people's fears about what conserving nature and biodiversity means. Also, in the 90s, there was an aversion in some parts of the state to land conservation, to conserving land for the public. And today, any public opinion poll on conserving open space and land ranks very high with the public, and that's across party lines, across the spectrum of conservatives to more liberal, progressive people. People understand the need for land that's not developed. Now, there's still occasional cases where something will pop up that people object to, but basically, public's interest in preserving parks, trails, open spaces is pretty, it's come to the forefront more. And I think the public is got a renewed appreciation and engagement with recreation. You know, in the 90s, I think people saw recreation as just a nice to have thing. I mean, it was always important for those close to the mission. There were always local governments and legislators and others who understood its value. But today, there's a broad public understanding of the value of the outdoors and recreation and access and trails and parks. So the agency's mission has really risen, I believe, in the public's view and understanding of its value.
It's funny too because I'm going to be hitting 40 in a couple years, so I would have thought preservation, the importance of outdoor recreation would have been something that would have been figured out in the 70s. But even into the 90s here in Pennsylvania, they're still like, well, it's nice to have, but is it necessary?
Exactly, and that's not. I mean, there always have been people who really lived that mission and cared. And but when the state park system was created in the 70s, 80s, there was a big surge of interest in camping and picnicking. At that in that era, you know, people were struggling financially, having a public lands to picnic and swim. We would get high visitation in state parks when the state park system was fully engaged. And I think some of the trends that happened after that, people building their backyard swimming pools, people seeing a more diminished role for recreation. And then over time, since the 90s, and then particularly injected by the COVID pandemic, people have really seen the value in recreation. And now it's understood more by more people in its full dimension of its value to health, mental health, fitness, wellness, quality of life, economy, property values, you name it. It's just risen in people's estimation of value. And that's been really helpful to our mission and then really, frankly, helped us serve people.
You've served as secretary of DCNR since 2015. What's the day-to-day operations like for you? What responsibilities take up most of your time?
Well, we're the largest landowner, and I say owner, but we're really the manager on behalf of the public. But as the entity that holds the largest piece of real estate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, things happen constantly. Good things, bad things. So yeah, floods happen. Infrastructure fails somewhere. People maybe get hurt. People get lost. A fairly large staff, something happens to a staff person. So the day-to-day is quite lively. Um, but I always strategically want to make a point to spend some of my, if not every day, like some of my week on forward-looking work. It really takes some discipline to structure some time for looking forward and I also pay attention to partners. DCNR was founded on the principle that included partnership. It was one of the three, and DCNR can't begin to accomplish our mission without partners. So we have to deliberately focus on key partnerships. I know one of them you've been involved with, Pennsylvania Park and Forest Foundation. That's really our key, public lands partner where friends groups and volunteers assist with park and forest land, help tell our story, help make a case for our needs, help people connect directly. But across the state, we have dozens of partners, so it's important in my job that I spend some time with those partners. And of course, major partner in our work is the legislature. They represent the they're elected by the people, so answering their questions and spending time, engaging with them on concerns and opportunities is something I do a lot of. So I get legislative calls or I initiate legislative calls, pretty much every day. And then, like to spend time, on staff or with staff. And again, day to day, it's hard to describe day to day. It's more easy to look at like in a given week, but I want to spend some time, focused on our own staff because our service is delivered at the hands of the people in the front line, and I always like to spend some time with that too. So it's try to be strategic and mindful. It would be easy just to deal with the stuff that comes over the bow and not focus on you know overlooking, not focus on partners, not focus on staff. But it's critical to make a point of doing all that.
What would you say the best and worst parts of your job are?
Well, the uh, the best part, I mean, I can just think of days where like I'm at a ribbon cutting for like an urban playground and the kids are playing on a new playground or in a new park that we were able to fund. And on the weekends, I spend a lot of time in state parks and forests, and I, just spending time in a park walking through a picnic area, seeing people having a good time. I get down to Pine Grove Furnace a lot, and there's a lot of multicultural families there walking through the picnic area, smelling all the interesting, wonderful smelling food, people having fun, laughing. I like to kayak past the swimming area, see people just having a great time in the water, goofing around, splashing each other. So I mean, just seeing people enjoy public lands, whether there are public lands or whether there are parks that we help fund or trails that we help fund, that's the best thing. Of course, some of the worst days are when someone gets hurt badly or worse. Um, uh, staff issues and concerns can be a negative sometimes. Some of your staff are struggling or suffering with something, and also it's the frustration when member of the public or an elected official really doesn't understand the value that we bring to a community that minimizes or diminishes the value of public lands or of our programs, and so that's a challenge. So that's kind of the spectrum for me. um, I love hearing the Governor Shapiro describe us in fullest dimension. So it again, people have this continuum of understanding of the value of public lands, parks, and forests. So when my staff or me hear the governor talking about our value in terms of the future of Pennsylvania, the economy of Pennsylvania, the quality of life in Pennsylvania, when you know that an influential person like a governor or legislator understands that. It number one, does great things for staff morale. I've told Governor Shapiro he does a lot for my staff morale because he talks about our work in the highest dimension and the value it brings to the public. Mental health, physical health, addiction management, et cetera, et cetera. That just gives a real boost to our morale and ego. And then, like I said, conversely, when a public elected official just doesn't see it, it's very frustrating.
In addition to the time you spend outdoors for work, you also have a lot of outdoor hobbies. What do you like to do most in the outdoors?
That's hard to answer because the thing I like doing most is the thing I'm doing at that moment. Um, yeah, so I hike, and of course it's in fall now. Hiking's big on my mind right now because I'll spend a lot of time. I hike in the fall and winter and early spring a lot because the view shed is greater when you're up in a mountain and you can see out. And also, I don't like hiking when I'm really, really hot. So this is getting to be my hiking season. But I paddle a lot. I really like canoeing and kayaking, and I combine it with bird watching. And lately, I've been getting back into fly fishing and combining my canoeing with fly fishing, which as a klutz that doesn't always go well. But but so I'm kind of doubling down on some of my hobbies here, like fishing and canoeing and bird watching and canoeing. So I like floating down the Susquehanna or the Connersville, watching birds, and that's always great. Paddling around the lake, just looking at people or looking at birds or scenery. So no, I just love time in the outdoors. I try to do it a lot. And I love stopping by, just popping into a park or forest or trail, just checking it out.
As an overheated hiker, I totally appreciate that as well. Fall is always my big year. Every weekend is a trip. Every weekend is another campsite, and it's great that you bring up hiking in the winter or doing things in the winter because a lot of people, even people that are just now getting into the outdoors, or even people who have been outdoors for a long time, they kind of see winter as like, all right, everything shuts down. I'm no longer doing anything. State parks, state forests, they're still open. There's
Yeah,
still plenty to do. You can go ice fishing, you can go snowshoeing. There's tons of things you can do.
that's a good point, and you can, pay a little more attention to safety in the winter. You should pay attention to that all the time, but, have a map, know where you're going, know how much time you plan to spend, have a plan, stick to it, tell someone where you are. But yeah, read up on dressing in layers if you don't know about that, and have the right footwear. But I think winter hiking is the best because you're naturally warm when you're hiking, and it's a good way not to have that like hibernation feeling in winter. Yeah, good way to get out hiking. So, I know you've gone to all the state parks, and have you run or hiked or both?
I've run a mile at every state park, and now I'm going back and just actually getting to enjoy everything about each state park. So I've done a little bit of both now. Finally,
So that's neat. I mean, that's just a good, and that can be a year-round pursuit. I do notice the public misses a lot of the key seasons in state parks and forests. You know, you see the crowds in summer, of course, and then, of course, right now with the leaves putting on a beautiful show across the state, it's coming to end in the north, but yeah, putting on a beautiful show. People come out to the parks and enjoy that. But when people are in that post Labor Day back to school time, they miss a lot of time in parks. It's just gorgeous.
hmm
It's summer like, warm. I just see the parks not being as full in those in those off seasons, and then of course people miss the winter in a way that I mean you can take a nice walk in one of the state park loops in the winter time, and it can be completely comfortable.
the Commonwealth added 3 new state parks in 2022. What did you see in those properties that made them an attractive addition to the state park system?
And the Mossberg Neck I'll start with because I had paddled the North Branch Susquehanna many times. And the Vosburg Neck is spectacular. It's a big loop bend in the Susquehanna with a a high cliff on one side and a peninsula on the other. And it's a big feature. Like when I'm sitting at my desk, I have a state map on the wall across the way, and I can see it from my desk. I mean, it's a big feature, and it's something that people, a local county commissioner, like years ago, said to me, "It should be a state park." Locals up there had said, and Senator Baker had said several times, this should be a state park. We didn't have the money at the time. Um, and so when the money became available from Governor Wolf and we talked to him about it, then that was the time to move on that. So that one was uh, really ripe to happen. And Big Elk Creek State Park down in Chester County, we had been acquiring the land with the help from the Conservation Fund and other land trusts down that way over time and just managing it as part of another nearby park, White Clay. But it's different and unique than White Clay. White Clay goes to the Delaware. Big Elk goes right to Chesapeake Bay, interestingly, not to the Susquehanna. The landscape there has got the Mason-Dixon line on it. It's a place where freedom seekers from the South escaped slavery and came across the Mason-Dixon line. It's a rolling grass hills and wooded valleys with trails in an area of the state that's seeing rapid growth. So uh, it'll serve uh, regionally and statewide. It'll be interesting. Plus, it back to back with a large state park in Maryland, Fairhill, on the south side of Mason Dixon is a large park. So it creates a large public landmass that'll be great for nature, great for recreation, etc. It actually has pretty good biodiversity as well. And then the lower Susquehanna, we've been working in the lower Susquehanna Riverlands for a while. That that lower gorge of the Susquehanna between Lancaster and York County is some of the most spectacular land in the state. It's Susquehanna carves sort of a canyon going south, and a lot of it had been preserved by the power companies as required by law. And then when they divested of the land, the Lancaster County Conservancy and DCNR and the two counties have conserved land. So we've been growing the conserved land base down there. It's important in those counties. They're highly developed and also highly agricultural. Lancaster County has the least of forest land cover of any county in the state, for instance. But the we saw an opportunity. Lancaster Conservancy saw an opportunity in Pelham Hills. It's the next extension north, and that area was under development pressure. And a couple parcels in Pelham Hill became available, including the one that became available that uh, ended up being Susquehanna Riverland State Park. It's a bluff that overlooks the Susquehanna. It's gorgeous. You can see up and down the river. It's right on, right on the edge. It includes a section of the Cadorus Creek, which is great paddle. It's actually a challenging whitewater paddle. And then there's Cadorus Furnace, which we've acquired the Iron Masters Mansion and are working on that. And that has historic relevance to the area that we'll be talking about a lot. And the America 250 PA, it'll have significance that the story will be told at the time of, you know, as we prepare for America 250 PA and look at our nation's history. So anyway, there's a lot of history right there at Cador's Furnace, and so it gave us a chance to tell that. But the conservation of Pelham Hills that Lancaster Conservancy has initiated, this allows us to have a part of that and have a place that everyone can go and enjoy, Susquehanna Riverlands.
While I've been to all three of them, I am really excited to see what Susquehanna Riverlands is going to be. I mean, it's just there's a great walk you can take to the overlook to see the river, and it's just absolutely stunning. I think I went the first week after it was dedicated, and I was just walking through it like this is going to be so much fun. It's such a perfect blank canvas that you can almost see everything. Like, oh, the hiking trails are pretty much already in there. The idea of a blank canvas has to be so exciting for you.
It is, and it is. We're trying to, and we're getting input from the public and users what they want to see. Obviously, like you said, there are trails there now. The Midstate Trail goes through it now. A person can enjoy it right now, but thinking about what developed amenities to build there to serve people and bring more people in to see this wonderful amenity. So we're doing public processes and hearing from people to see what they want, see what recreation they feel is needed.
Yeah. I filled out the survey. Whenever you
Good.
see
Oh, good.
whenever you see those online, if you follow, make sure you follow DCNR on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Whenever you see those surveys, take them because you want to know what people want to see, and especially the people that are going to be using this a ton. It's important to have this input from the public to be able to develop things for the future.
Yeah, thanks for saying that because we serve the public, and you really can't do that well unless you understand what the public wants. And we'll be starting another statewide recreation plan next year, and that will include significant public input opportunities on recreation across the Commonwealth. So yes, thank you for making that plug. We can't serve people without hearing from them, and we appreciate when people take the time to do that.
Is it difficult to balance land conservation with outdoor recreation?
It takes, well, I won't say it's difficult. It takes professional work, and that's something that a lot of people in the public don't really appreciate. Like, they'll be on a trail and they'll think, "Oh, there's a trail here. Gosh, I wonder how long it's been here." Not realizing that trails take design, work, maintenance, lot of times some volunteer sweat equity. So we're doing a lot of work to go back and move trails and secure trails and harden trails so they have less impact on the environment. Some of the past trails we have and amenities we have were just added on. Like, say it's an old logging road and it became a trail. Well, it can be washed out. Everyone's seen them, that trail that's like 3 feet down in the landscape, you're on rocks. That's not a sustainable trail. So we're going back and trying to redesign, improve, and build them so they don't have an impact on the environment or have less impact on the environment. It takes a good planning and number one, first layer down, we always try to understand the biodiversity. Our Conservation Explorer tool, the PNDI, shows that other endangered species there, things we need to avoid, like a rattlesnake den, and then looking at the lay of the land, getting the right slope, and then designing the trail or the amenity. So it takes professional judgment and time, and we have a long way to go. We have to go back and fix some of the issues in the past. But if you do it right, um, you can really minimize that impact. The benefit of the recreation side of the equation is it really calls for more conservation. We like to say recreation is a gateway drug for conservation. People who spend time outdoors, learn about the outdoors, appreciate the outdoors, really want to conserve it, but also want more public lands, want more conserved green space. So the two are linked in a positive way, and we just have to manage that balance on a site by site basis.
I always say the same thing with outdoor recreation in terms of if you start to fall in love with the outdoors, you're going to become a steward. You're going to want to become an advocate. You're going to want to talk to your senator. You're going to want to reach out and join a hiking club and things like that. The moment you get to see what we have to offer, I feel like you're going to fall in love with it.
I think that's if you talk to people about why they care about nature, why they care about the outdoors, chances are they'll say, "Well, my dad took me fishing," or I liked hiking. I found love with hiking, and I started to observe and see the birds and the wildlife and the wildflowers. Then I started to think about conserving it. There's a definite pathway there, and yeah, hunters and fishermen feel the same thing. They get to really observe and understand the species that number one that they're hunting, and number two that they're interacting with. So that connection with nature is built by time outdoors.
One of the biggest issues facing DCNR is deferred maintenance projects totaling more than $1 billion in our state parks and forests. What kind of projects are not being funded?
That's a great question. We have this huge infrastructure system. People don't think of us as buildings, roads, and bridges, but we have 4,700 buildings. We have 3,700 miles of roads. We have hundreds of bridges. We have dams. Thankfully, both in the last administration and the most recently, Governor Shapiro put 112 million in our budget for park and forest infrastructure. We are getting to many of the projects I would deem as kind of scary. We had dams with deferred maintenance, and of course that was a worry. We have really clicked through and repaired and replaced or torn out a lot of dams, but we still have a few to go, and there'll be more coming. As far as roads and bridges, we're just working down through the list. And as far as like the sewer and water systems, we started tackling the most egregious issues to get water and sewer systems fixed up and up to par. But that's a continuing, yeah, we'll move on down the line to less critical ones. So there's from every category that you can think of, there's still work to be done. And then, of course, as time goes on, it's just like managing any infrastructure, like your own home. That roof might be good for 25 years, and you might be on year 19. Well, you're going to be scheduling that repair. So we have a lot of roofs. Have a lot of buildings, have a lot of roofs. So the biggest gain we made on a lot of the buildings, we did a Guaranteed Energy Savings Act program where we invested in lights, building envelope, air leakage, in order to make the buildings more energy efficient, more comfortable for staff and visitors. So that investment actually improved a lot of buildings and really brought them up to modern code. So it's just little things like they're not as drafty, but that saves a lot of energy. And then switching out LED lights, improving motors and systems and pumps. Some of that stuff's not sexy, but it saves our bottom line, saves a lot of operating dollars. So every year our bills are less and our buildings are better. But again, that's a long-term process where we've done the western third of the state, the middle part of the state we have worked on, and we'll begin work on the eastern part of the state.
What's the key to addressing these improvements and projects? Is it simply getting more money from the Commonwealth or is it deeper?
It's both. We are getting more money, having a steady supply of money, so that we can begin. Projects have planning, design, in beginnings and ends, but you have to know, like when you do the planning and design, you've got to know the money is going to be there for the project, and then costs escalate. So having steady funding is important as well as having enough funding. And we got a big, like I said, big boost in funding this year from the governor. We need to keep up a higher level of funding that we had in the past. Just thinking about any infrastructure, if you're running your family budget or home budget, you're going to need some money for stuff, as it comes due if you own a house. Same deal here with 4 billion in infrastructure. We know there's going to be bridges age out, roofs age out, buildings age out. So just having a steady supply of infrastructure dollars. And we like to say, this does return money to the state coffers. Our projects in state park and forest land are done by local contractors. They're not the big kind of projects that attract like out of state bidders to bid on our projects, like say a big highway project might. So they're local contractors, sometimes small businesses. We have a lot of small businesses benefit from our work. So that generates economy in and of itself, beyond the typical recreation economy of providing for visitors and et cetera. So that ongoing regular work is important uh, to the whole community.
Every year you have to go before the governor and lawmakers to request money. What's the pitch you make when you're asking for an increase in funding? What do you say to them?
I talk about it as a return on investment. Recreation brings in, 14 billion to the state's economy. That investment pays in droves back to the state coffers. Um, Years ago, we did a study on state parks, and at that time, for every dollar spent on a state park, 10 are returned to the economy. The challenge sometimes I have is having the legislators understand it. No, that money doesn't come back into our budget. It comes back in through the purchases of goods and services and comes back in to the state's economy through things like income tax and sales tax and everything else. So, and one time I said to a legislator, I wish we could die trace the dollars that are the result of parks, forests, visitation, trails, and see how it's benefiting the economy. But maybe even more importantly, in the long run, keeping Pennsylvania a place where people want to live, work, and play is critical. We've got to attract and keep young people. If you look at our aging demographic, we've got to have young people in the workforce. And I think that's one of the reasons the governor really embraces our mission. He sees it as one of those positive factors. People choose, where they're going to live based on quality of life. And Pennsylvania has a great quality of life, is due in part to the outdoor recreation that we have. So that, that's hard to quantify in a budget what that value is, but we hear it everywhere we go. That someone will have moved back to the little town where their parents are from because they can tell they're working their job and they want to be near that trail along the river. They want to be near the parks and the forest in the area. They like our communities. So I just think the value to the economy, the value to the quality of life is the main pitch I make.
How do you balance the choice between spending money on to add a new state park or to address deferred maintenance projects?
Yeah, managing a budget is one of those annual challenges and looking ahead. When we see a new state park opportunity in an area where we have struggled to serve all people, and I'll talk about that again later, I'm sure. But there's once in a lifetime opportunities to add to the system and especially if it's a site that really belongs in the public domain. It's something of, if it's something significant like Susquehanna Riverlands or like Vosburg or like Big Elk, where it belongs in the public domain because it's part of our story in Pennsylvania. It's part of who we are. It's part of our legacy. And you have a once in a lifetime chance to make it a state park. It's time to jump, even though you know that you could spend that money, fixing up, like for another water system or a road or a bridge. But in terms of serving the public and serving all the public, we have to take those leaps when we see the right opportunity. And again, with the formula being that they will return, like it make those investments in time, both buying the land or putting the infrastructure in place. And of course, you have to maintain it over time, but it'll begin returning to the economy as soon as it's functional. So again, it'll raise our value and raise the local economy around it. So it'll have value pretty much right away. But again, because we don't see that money coming right back to our coffers, sometimes it's hard to explain that relationship. We find out about a lot of opportunities to create new parks, and they range on the scale of, gosh, this really should be in the public domain, and people would love it. It would serve people too. Um, this, we just can't afford this because we don't have the budget for it. So, and if an area is served by other parks and served well by other amenities, then we take a pass on it.
I think these three new state parks offer a really good example of what it can provide the public. You have something like Big Elk Creek, where you have this beautiful history and heritage about the Underground Railroad and the role it played. And then you look at the Susquehanna Riverlands and you say, well, the absolute natural beauty and the views are really important. And then you also go down to Vosburg Neck and you have this really important feature that isn't everywhere in the state. It's something that can only really be found here. So when you kind of add those up, where you go natural beauty, history, heritage, unique feature. I think that's a good example to show. Yes, we might be adding more state parks, but we're adding them for a reason, not just to do it to do it.
You mentioned, telling the history. Yes, so Big Elk and Big Elk and Susquehanna Riverlands will tell stories that really belong in the public domain. that we don't have any other place to tell them. And Susquehanna River lands right there in the border between New York and Lancaster, where we don't have, especially in Lancaster County side, don't have a lot of parks, don't have a lot of service to the public, and two very fast growing counties of the Commonwealth. In Vosburg, we never had a park in Wyoming County. And in fact, if you look, Wyoming, Bradford, Susquehanna, that area doesn't have a ton of public lands, and so it is serving people who don't have that kind of access. Also, they're all fairly short drives from big metro areas. Vosburg is really, if you come up from Wilkes-Barre, you're in Vosburg in 30, 40 minutes, probably more like 40. Susquehanna Riverland's a fast-growing counties, and it's actually very close to the Harrisburg metro and New York, Lancaster. And Big Elk, of course, is in the Philly, Wilmington metro area.
What do you think is the biggest issue or issues facing our parks and forests today?
Well, I think taking care of the natural environment in the face of climate change, with the deluge rain events that we have, um, changes in weather patterns where you'll have an early spring warm up, trees bloom, and then frost hits and kills them, kills buds. The Another climate change driven problem is really invasive species. If you talk to our on the ground managers of parks and forestry, they'll say like battling invasive species is a major concern because it's so hard to do and so overwhelming, and it could just suck up all the resources. Um, and then the frustration of you know, like say building a trail or building a road, and then having a flood event, a deluge event that we have with climate change, these really intense rainfall, have that wash it out or damage it like so soon after it's been improved. It's very frustrating. So it's all climate change driven issues. Also, also driven by climate change. Our lakes and the state park lakes, as they're very valued for swimming in the summer. Um, we've had hazardous algae blooms in lakes, and that's a climate change driven issue. Our lakes are filling up. One of the infrastructure projects we're doing across the system is lake dredging to kind of restore the lake as a swimming boating lake. We have them on the schedule. That's some of the infrastructure. Yeah, you ask, what haven't we gotten to? That is one I should have mentioned, but it combines shallow depth with the hot water is creating soupy algae, less appealing conditions in our lakes. So that's a big challenge driven by climate change. So they all fit under the bucket of climate change, but the on the ground management is more complex, because of it. And we're looking at ways to harden infrastructure so that it's less affected by floods. We're looking at, improving the lakes, dredging the lakes, getting them back, looking at thinking about how could we improve the water coming into the lakes, so that they're not getting as much in the way of nutrients, and looking at even the land around the park. How can we prevent runoff and reduce runoff coming into the lakes?
I know you've worked hard to address the issues related to climate change, and you guys are adopting and implementing best practices. Are there any projects out there that you see that are low hanging fruit that you guys are taking care of on a daily or weekly, monthly, yearly basis? And then what are the large, big, expensive projects? Would it be the lake dredging?
Yeah, yeah, lake dredging is being expensive and long term. We're tackling Little Pine next year is one, and we have a long term lake dredging plan where the various lakes are on a plan, and that, of course, that's very disruptive. That's a drawdown, a loss of a season, or loss of a partial season. It's kind of a big deal. Um, One project that we're looking forward to at Gifford Pinchot State Park, we're using that as sort of a model green park. We're adding solar and we're doing green infrastructure in the parking area and solar panels over the parking. So this is we've done solar panels in the parking area at Ryerson Station State Park. It's immensely popular. Has a couple of benefits. Number one, it'll help net zero out the park. Number two, it provides shade for cars parking, and then we'll also improve the runoff characteristics into the lake by adding green infrastructure. and swales and natural vegetation to reduce the runoff in that parking area. We picked Gifford Pinchot not only because it's a big important lake and a swimming area that we have problems with pollution, but it also is close to Harrisburg and can provide a demonstration that we can use to show legislators, decision makers, anyone who wants to use it as educational, like conferences that come into Harrisburg, perhaps of local government, that this kind of design and you know, reducing your energy consumption by adding parking lot solar and green infrastructure design can help um, any piece of land that's developed. So we're looking at that project as kind of a neat one.
Yeah, I think it's important too when we're talking about outdoor recreation or conservation. There's the people that are always going to be with you. There's the people that are like outdoorsy. Of course, any projects you're doing, we're going to love. Then you have the people that are a little bit more like, well, how's it going to make us money, or how is it going to save us money? And I think the idea of going at it from every different angle is what's going to serve the outdoors best. I think it's to convince everybody by coming at it from every different angle.
No, I think you're right. Again, as a public service agency, we serve all Pennsylvanians. We're here to serve all Pennsylvanians. I think one of the biggest implicit opportunity is getting new people out and getting new people into the family of outdoor recreation of nature. And of course, that can be achieved through our grants program, where we're able to support cities and boroughs and local government providing close to home recreation. But hoping that that's a continuum where people, once they've gotten interested in trails and decided to hike, well, then maybe after hiking nearby, they'll decide, hey, I'll go visit a state park, and it'll become an outdoor recreation. So inviting and getting new people into the family is important. And I think that's some of our efforts we have underway in our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging team, trying to reduce the barriers, find opportunities to bring more people into the fold. Um, and then using the public lands as a demonstration for sustainability. Um, Sustainability, getting the Commonwealth to its goals, getting reducing energy consumption, reducing flooding, etc. It can't be achieved just through the public lands. People have to take these ideas home and use them, whether it's their home, whether it's their business that they might work at or own, whether it's a farm, whether it's a parcel of land, whether it's some church you're involved with or whatever. You can take these ideas and use them on any landscape. So we try to provide the model that people will then use.
One of the most important actions of your tenure has been the creation of the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps. Why is that a priority for you?
Well, we recognize the need to keep a pipeline of workforce coming. And we also recognize the need to have that workforce be more diverse. So we brainstormed the idea of the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps. We worked with labor and industry, which provides a good bit of the funding, some of the funding. And then we developed a program and do it through a contract with Student Conservation Association, who does this across the country. And these crews of young people, we have both youth crews that work in the summer, 15 to 18-year-olds, and then adult crews who work pretty much year round, 18 to 25-year-olds. They get direct workforce experience, the soft skills, showing up, looking people in the eye, communicating well, communicating as a team, leadership skills, certification from various things that we train them on, and then they get hands-on work in the outdoors and parks and forests. And it's busted that myth about young people not working hard. These young people work very hard and they're very motivated and they communicate well. And you asked at some of my best days, I should have mentioned, like when I'm outside working with the outdoor corps at a project, I really love that. It's interesting how committed these folks are to the work. And of course, it's great for our mission because they're improving trails and bridges. They're removing invasive species. They're improving the infrastructure and getting hands-on experience. So some of these people go on to apply for jobs and get jobs in DCNR. And the good news about that is they know they want this kind of work. They've had experience and we've gotten to know them. And so it takes a little of the mystery out for us of hiring. We know we're getting people who are committed and really want to do this, and some of them obviously do not choose work with us, but the work the work skills they gain, like showing up on time, working with a team, communicating, those tools are valuable wherever they go, and they get it in this team environment. So it's just been really a valuable program and project. I would say a lot of our my exec team at DCNR would say that's one of their favorite things is the outdoor core.
In 2023, the Pennsylvania Office of Outdoor Recreation was created. Why was this an important step for DCNR to take, and how do you see it helping Pennsylvanians?
Well, Pennsylvania is a big state in the outdoor recreation economy. We're sixth in the nation. We're an outdoor state. You know, we hike, we bike, we fish, we canoe, we hunt. And it just made sense that Pennsylvania join the states that have organized our efforts. So, creating an outdoor office, hiring Dr. Nathan Rigdor was a great first step to kind of convene and understand the connection to the outdoor businesses, help organize and think about how to support those outdoor businesses, help connect them, and help build the understanding of the recreation amenities of what's needed on that end, the stewardship, the sustainability, and then build on that. If you think about, say, the agricultural industry, when you say ag industry, everyone knows what that is. I mean, people see the feed stores, equipment stores, the tractors, place you buy tractors and equipment, the place you get it repaired, all this support for the ag economy for obvious reasons. We all need to eat, but we don't have an organized, cohesive support for the recreation industry, and yet it's big and it's varied. And understanding it, connecting it to the work, building the support for it, and then building a support for providers like DCNR and local governments and others to understand and really have the science behind the needs and emerging needs and the best practices on how to meet them sustainably. So it's been a big plus for all sectors. It'll continue to grow in its depth. We have approval to hire two more people under Dr. Rigner, and that will help build out the outdoor rec office and yield the results we're looking for. The program's got launching a grant program for small recreation businesses to help them get the support they need. A lot of times, those startups don't get support. They had not been on the radar screen in the way other businesses are, and yet they're they're important in that matrix of providers for the public lands. A lot of people want to experience public lands, want to experience recreation, don't have the knowledge or the equipment, and the outdoor recreation providers are key to that.
And when Nathan was on this program, he spoke about his statewide tour that he did, which I think was so great and so important to just be able to say, this is what we want to do and this is how we can help. There's so many different ways to come at a issue. And so when Nathan can come out and say that we have billions and billions of dollars on the table that we can harness and help businesses and help our economy, help individuals, I think it becomes undeniable at that point.
It really does, and it becomes and it's something that is an emerging understanding of how important it is. You see news stories like almost every day about growing understanding of how important this industry really is. And of course, that in turn helps. And you say, what do I say when I make an ask to the legislature for our funding? To really frame it that way, we're supporting a big economy and a lot of outdoor recreation businesses. This is not just a government thing. This is really essential to our economy and our future.
Most outdoor recreationists want money spent on their hobbies that they enjoy, more hiking trails, more fishing docks, and so on. How does the department make sure money is being spent equitably across many different areas and many different activities?
I guess it's a good thing that there's so much competition for our grants and our attention, but it is a challenge, and that is a something we continue to refine and grow in how we do that. We the state park system was sort of laid out as a park within 25 miles of every Pennsylvania. Of course, in today's world, 25 miles is far away for a lot of people. Our grants program set a goal of a park and a trail within 10 minutes of every Pennsylvanian. And that's a great goal, and we're working on that. But that doesn't even tell the whole story. As you dig down a couple more layers, we hired the Trust for Public Land to do layered analysis and mapping on showing the communities of need where the community doesn't have the funding to make the investment, the co-investment with us. So now we have additional layers showing the communities of need, and a lot of meeting that need is really going to take us and our partners spending time to understand the obstacles. And sometimes they're physical, sometimes it's as simple as like a highway that cuts off access from a neighborhood to a river or a trail. Sometimes it's social. There just has never been a habit or a tradition of people in that community like using that trail or using that park. So achieving equitability is a journey. It's something that we're working on. We have a grant equity group working on that. On the on the on the urban buffer program, we plant tree buffers in rural areas. We plant urban forests in the more suburban and urban places. We hired a tree equity specialist, and we're working with our partners and our municipalities and cities on street trees, on shading trees to kind of cool down the urban areas. So the distributing equitably and especially adding equity is a long-term journey, which we're doubling down on to really improve. But in terms of equitably, like in terms of making these investments, we have a couple of tools in place. In the Keystone Fund, we have a dividing between park and forest infrastructure and grants, and then with the grant program, we divide by region, and the regional reps then take it out and try to apply some of these other principles. And the state park system is divided by 4 regions that get a budget. So we try to spread it out so that the whole Commonwealth is served. And again, some of the more finer points of that are things we're still working on.
You served as secretary through the pandemic. That had to be a very interesting experience, going from the normal attendance that you would see to all of a sudden nobody's allowed to travel, nobody's allowed to leave the country, and then everyone goes, "Oh, there's state parks here. I guess we'll go to those." And then the amount of visitors exploded. What was that like for you to have to deal with as a department head? But also, what was that like for somebody who enjoys the outdoors and to see people discovering the outdoors?
Yeah, you're right. It was a challenging time. So the first the first early days of that mid-March, where it was everyone work from home, everyone stay home, and buildings are closed, um, and so it was hard to get guidance. I mean, the Center for Disease Control, uh, our own health people were trying to get a handle on this very contagious disease that was killing people, but what does it take to keep them safe? So um, we had a couple of weeks we're trying to figure out what can we do. And so for a while, the bathrooms were closed, the buildings were closed, and the buildings weren't allowed to be open. But we had to have staff on site because people were allowed on the public lands. We decided the public lands had to be the outlet for people. Um, and people came in droves. And because the chaotic way things were then, at first, garbage wasn't being handled well. People were just leaving trash and such. Eventually, as the guidance became clear and we were allowed to get people back in and we're allowed to have buildings like restrooms open, finally, the Center for Disease Control said, if you have a park open, you should have a restroom open.
Yeah.
Which is sort of logical, but the guidance before had been, stay out of buildings. So so then it's like just trying to get people to spread out and not crowd into the restrooms and building. So as the pandemic progressed, people came out in more and more droves, and then we had parks filling up and closing, and we had to like quickly adjust and try to find other areas. So a good example of that, Beltsville in Carbon County was one of the first to fill up many times with lines of people. I mean, just coming in from like Allentown, Bethlehem, Philly, New Jersey, New York. Um, and have to close the gates, which was chaotic because it was full. And then they're looking for other places on the internet, a place called the Tub. So it was it's a stream in a gorge near Wilkes-Barre. It's beautiful. It's on forest land. It's not even a state park, and people were showing up there by the hundreds and parking along a busy road.
Wow.
And so we have since, I mean, I was just up there 2 weeks ago. We have since improved the parking lot, added a bathroom, but it's a part of the state forest system. It was never designed like a state park, and now we're adapting and making that available to people because now people have discovered the tubs. We were challenging our staff in forestry and in parks, like where can people go? That we got to find some more places, additional places, because without that, people were finding them themselves on the internet. So it's better to try to direct people someplace that's a little safer, a little better, spread people out for their own safety with COVID, spread people out so the sustainability of the land that doesn't get as trampled and ruined. So it was quite challenging. We the management team was on the phone daily for a while, and then weekly, just managing things as they came up and making decisions. Sometimes, we were in kind of in the wilderness on the decision. Sometimes we just had to make our best decision, but with input from kind of gather the leader's knowledge and opinion, and make a call. But the good side of it, the silver lining here, is people really reconnected with nature and the outdoors. I think it's their physical health, their mental health, and some of the factors like being crowded into a home with people attending school from home, telework from home, people crammed into spaces just dying to get outside. Seeing other people in a safe way outside with clean air. You can see people, but they might be in a trail or in a park, but you're at least around people again. And we are a social animal after all.
Yeah.
I just think evolutionarily, I mean, we've evolved as a species in the outdoors, and nature is our safe space. Nature is where we're essentially comfortable and where we gain comfort. And I just think people gaining comfort from the outdoors and being in nature, for the mental health, physical health, and well-being, and just to spread out and breathe clean air. And we all got so tired of the mask, just to be able to breathe the air and walk was just the best thing. I know, when I could get a break from managing the public lands in this pandemic, I would certainly myself get out there a lot. Oh, and then the other thing we're trying to do is DCNR is work with our partners. So our land trust partners, our recreation agencies, like county parks, township parks, they were all looking for the same answers and looking to us. We were looking to CDC and Department of Health. So we're all trying to work together. Like, what's the best thing? What's the safest thing? What's going to serve people? Um, it was quite a journey. It's but emerging from that now, uh, there's a greater understanding of the value of the outdoors and recreation as something that's essential. It moved in people's column from nice to have to essential. And even during the pandemic, when that stay-at-home order came in, it was, if you read it, it said, you can leave your house to get groceries and, pharmaceuticals, and the third thing was you can get outside and take a walk. And so it was listed as essential, and, it certainly was what people did. I mean, it was great that, the outdoors could serve at that time when people needed us most. And that interest has continued, which is great. And it got a lot of people back into the outdoors. People, renewed interest in camping, and the renewed interest in camping has stayed high. Our campground reservations have stayed high. Visitation has stayed higher than it was before the pandemic. People taking up new outdoor recreation pursuits, people re-engaging who may have stopped camping or may have stopped hiking or picnicking in a park or going back to it. So it's great. It's something that'll be with us now, and different in the way people look at it.
What sort of park and forest projects are you looking forward to most in 2024?
Well, the I mentioned the Tubbs project that'll be finished. I was up to the site. It's almost finished. That'll be finished early next year. An environmental project at the Shikellamy Dam is a fish ladder, and what's exciting about that is it's a natural fish ladder. We sent people up to Maine to look at one, and we got an engineering firm to design a natural fish ladder because our dam at Shikellamy blocks fish migration. So that one's going to be exciting. The Susquehanna, of course, is the biggest river, one of the largest rivers in the east, and keeping it open for fish migration is important. So it's an environmental project, and it's kind of going to create a cool space, a much improved end of that dam for local use and people just visiting. Denton Hill is a was a park that was just skiing. You probably when you went there to see it, and it's boarded up right now. So we're beginning the Denton project, and it's going to be a four-season recreation center. Um, there'll be a ski element, but like there'll be a lift that'll also be used to haul bikes up to the top to get on a bike trail. It's near the ATV trail system up in the Susquehanna Forest District. So Denton, the plans for Denton will start to really unfold and get going on that. There's a campground up at Pymatuning is an immense lake, as you know. It's just huge, and it we had closed the campground back in the early 2000s, and that campground construction finished. Tuttle Campground will be open. That's kind of neat, and it'll have a lot of nice features. I mentioned the Gifford Pinchot Sustainability Project. That'll be done, and we'll be able to start taking people to see that. That's at the Quaker Race Day use. That's kind of neat. Yeah, well, restoring the Iron Masters Mansion at Kidderworth, right there by the Susquehanna Riverlands. That restoration is underway. Even as the rest of the park's being planned, we're putting the restoration of that on the fast track because it's one of the historical sites that'll be featured for America 250. Um, we'll doing a couple of lake dredgings. Again, they're not sexy, but they're important. So anyway, a lot of projects. And then on the grant side, we're really focused on closing trail gaps. I was, out to the announcement of our grants with the governor. We were standing on the South Bethlehem Greenway, and that connector will be really interesting. It'll connect to the Falcon Valley Trail, which will really connect down to Hellerton, which will really important for the community. It's a community that hasn't enjoyed those kind of amenities, so that's on the grant side. There's just so many cool projects of local parks and trail connectors. Um, anyway, we're good things happening around the state. That's the nice thing about our program. There's grants across the Commonwealth and good things happening everywhere, and projects sprinkled across the Commonwealth.
Yeah, the sheer variety is pretty stunning, and it's just because you have all the buildings, you have all the history, you have all the trails and the land. It crosses every single sort of checklist you could hope for in terms of
Absolutely.
things that are available. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of like getting stuff off the worry list, the dam project at Memorial Lake will be underway. Again, we've made huge progress on the unsafe dams, and so we continue to click them off. And Memorial Lake is up. This is coming up to the forefront.
Do you ever think about your legacy at DCNR?
Well, it's funny. Generally too busy to think much about that. Uh, kind of just moving forward. But it would certainly be something I'd want the agency as people to be better suited for sustainability. I mean, sustainability of mission, sustainability of climate, sustainability of the human service side, etc. And so, strengthening and building our operations in every way possible is important. I just think our mission is so geographically widespread and so diverse in its delivery. Um, I think it'd be a mistake like to pick one thing and say this is it. This one thing is. It's more strengthening our work so that we serve all Pennsylvanians. And I know that's a journey, but I think really working on that journey and getting farther down that road is really important. And serving all Pennsylvanians, I know that's something we don't meet right now. Um, it's something we're focused on. It's in the Constitution. We're not reaching all Pennsylvanians, and we're trying hard. So I think doubling down on that and serving all Pennsylvanians, both because of sustainability, climate, and direct access to recreation. would be a legacy, and not just mine. It's a team legacy.
It's actually kind of good to know that there's no ultimate goal. Like there's something in your head that goes, well, when we hit this, this is when I feel like I know I've really done it. When we hit, 250 state parks or anything like that, it's good to know that it crosses so many different areas that there's no one thing.
No, one thing, it's also like the human resource side of it is just as important. Having a motivated, trained staff showing up. That's why the outdoor core is so important. And the pipeline for staff. None of this happens without good, knowledgeable, committed staff. And so focusing on that and keeping that pipeline of staff coming in who are taking the place of those who retire. And that's a challenge actually. I mean, we have our people, many of them are really uniquely qualified for their job and have deeply rooted knowledge in the area they're in. And when we lose some people, they're actually hard to replace. So just keeping that pipeline of skill and talent and motivation going is important part of the legacy as well. So just leaving it better than I found it. I guess the old Girl Scout motto would be a good one.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I most appreciate about you is I've been able to attend a number of events where you've been there. You are the last person to leave almost every single time I go somewhere. If it's a press event for DCNR, if it's something with the Parks Foundation, you're out shaking hands and introducing yourself to people or asking people questions, genuinely interested in what they have to say. So the fact that you pay so much attention and care so much, it comes across in every single meeting I've ever had with you, but every single meeting I think everyone has with you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, it's funny. I didn't think about that, but our work's delivered through the hands of other people, whether they're partners or whether we're serving citizens or whether they're helping us, and understanding them and being out and about. It's a kind of rare opportunity to have a window into what people are thinking in a certain area, a certain community. They don't want to lose that opportunity by I hate it too. I hate when I have to jump in a car and zoom off. Sometimes I have to because the next thing is far enough away. I hate that because I'm curious about people. It's interesting and it's inspiring to hear people talk about the place they love and to hear what something means to them, because that adds a lot of depth to the work when you run into somebody who cares so much about that trail connector, cares so much about that park, and they tell you the story of how their parents met at that park. So their very existence, depended on that park because if their parents hadn't met, they wouldn't exist. So um, that adds a dimension to the work that I find to be very enriching.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people, I'm sure, department heads really love their bridges or really love this little section of what they care about. But I love so much, and one of the things I appreciate so much about you is you can tell how much you care about our parks and forests every single time you meet. It's never a well, we're doing this project, we're doing this. You're always so excited to talk about what you guys are doing, and you always want to highlight your team. And I think that shows what an incredible leader you are and how absolutely fortunate we are to have you serving this Commonwealth.
Oh, wow, thank you, I'm very touched by that, I really appreciate that, and, appreciate the voice you give to the value of our parks and forests and reaching people, because that helps us directly with our mission. We can't reach, everybody, and, people like you reach a lot of people, so that's exciting for us to have that avenue, and then, to do what you do and actually go out there yourself and then be able to talk about that experience directly. That's going to motivate some people to discover this great thing that we know about. That's the state park system. So appreciate the voice that you give it and what you're able to do for us and attracting people to appreciate and engage in what they have as Pennsylvanians.
How would you like to be remembered when you're done serving as secretary?
Uh, I think just as a good public servant, just as someone who served and who was a good public servant. Because that actually is a high calling. If people understand it, it sounds like it doesn't sound like a lofty thing, but it really is a high calling to be a true public servant. And and so in doing so, like in trying to be a good public servant, then you want to motivate others to be a good public servant or appreciate public servants, appreciate the public servants in their lives. So I think just a good public servant would be fine.
I've always said a life in service is a life well led.
It is, and that's a much more eloquent way to put it. Think about my father, who was a civil engineer for the state, and yeah, people don't appreciate the work. The work of the people whose heads are down doing the work, designing things, building things. They never meet the person who designs something that helps them. I'll get teary. My dad was a true public servant, and that's all I want to be. Sorry, thinking about my dad got me going there.
Secretary, I just want to thank you so much for being able to talk to me today. And I also want to thank you so much for your incredible work with this Commonwealth. You inspire a lot of us out there that care about the outdoors, hopefully to care about them as much as you do. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for giving me the time, and I hope people take advantage of the outdoors. Hope they get out there this winter and have a great 2024 in the outdoors. Learn new things, get out there, explore, discover a few new state parks, new trail, and then maybe even volunteer and help out.
I want to thank my guest, Secretary Cindy Adams Dunn, for joining the podcast. She graciously gave her time to share her knowledge, experience, and passion for the outdoors with all of us. Well, that's the end of the first season. But before we end this episode, I have some people I'd like to thank. First and foremost, I want to thank my incredible wife, Abby, not only for her support and suggestions, but also for listening to me talk about this podcast without a break for over a year. You're the best wife a man could ask for, and the best adventure buddy anyone could have. I also want to thank my mom and dad for their continued encouragement and support. Thank you so much. You're the best. Thank you to Sean Connolly for your mentorship and for inspiring me to start this podcast. Thank you to Wes Robinson with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for answering my many emails and booking guests for the podcast. Thank you to Marcy Mowry, Pam Metzger, and Tasha Ferris from the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. Thank you to Brooke Linker and Holly Tritt from the Keystone Trails Association. Thank you to Matt Davis for designing the podcast branding, including the logo that I use on social media and in merch. Thank you to my Uncle John Sauer for composing, performing, and recording all of our podcast music. Thank you to Kristen Markle for designing the marketing material I use for merch, posters, thank yous, and more. Thank you to James Robinson for his incredible photography that we use for merch, and thanks for coming up with the name of the podcast. Thank you to Darren Potts for helping me with the production of our promotional materials and merch. Thank you to my family and friends for listening to and supporting the podcast. Thank you to all of our guests who have come on the podcast and shared their passion for the outdoors with all of us. And finally, thank you to you. I had no idea if anyone would listen to this podcast. I hoped it would find an audience of people that loved Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors, and it did. Thousands of you have listened to this podcast. You shared posts on social media, you've given ratings, you've suggested it to friends, you've purchased merch, and you've helped build a great community of listeners. Thank you for your support, encouragement, and friendship. I hope we can build this community even bigger by inspiring people to visit Pennsylvania's public lands and becoming lifelong stewards of them. As John Muir once said, one touch of nature makes the whole world kin. That's it. The first season's over. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more information about upcoming episodes. You can support the podcast by buying merch or donating on our website. We kick off our first episode of the second season on January 3rd, 2024. I hope you'll join us again. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexanderson. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Uncle Traveling Matt's Random Expedition.